Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Mental Health Matters. This is Tom Duff with St. Louis Counseling, and you are tuning in. I guess you're not really tuning in, you're streaming us, or you're downloading us, but Mental Health Matters, that's our podcast of St. Louis Counseling where we break down stigma. The goal of this podcast is to make talking about mental health okay around the dinner table, and to get rid of all those stigmas that are connected to mental health. And in today's day and age, we certainly need to keep breaking down the stigma, because we know that sometimes the word mental illness gets thrown around a little bit, but ultimately we are talking about our mental health. So we all have health, we all have physical health, we all have mental health. Sometimes people are just dealing with a mental illness as well too. So subscribe to our podcast, download our podcast, tell people about the podcast of Mental Health Matters. And if you are curious about our services at St. Louis Counseling, go to our website, stlouiscounseling.org. Spell out stlouiscounseling.org. As always, we have entertaining and informative guests, and today is no exception. We have Reshaunda Thonton with us. Hi, Reshaunda. How are you?
I'm doing well, Tom. How are you?
I'm doing well.
Great.
Doing well. And Reshaunda is here in St. Louis with us, and she is a registered and licensed dietitian. But you know what? You're kind of a little bit of everything. As I've kind of researched you a little bit, you bring a lot to the table. And one of the reasons when we had a mutual person connect us. Because he knows as a therapist, I'm into looking at the whole person, helping the whole person. And sometimes when somebody's dealing with a mental health issue or just trying to improve their overall quality of life, nutrition, exercise, sleep, major components. So I'm excited to talk
agree.
today.
Well, I'm excited as well. I believe we are speaking the same language. We just have a different dialect.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So tell us first about you. Why did you want to become a registered dietitian?
I'll keep it short and sweet because
Yeah.
it can be long-winded.
Okay.
But essentially, before I actually came into the practice as a dietitian, I worked in the field of research in genetics. So a lot of background in understanding human physiology, and also studied and got my minor in psychology.
Really?
And at the time, I had no idea how they were all intertwined. And so I decided to go into the field of dietetics and create my own private practice. And what I find as a dietitian, our goal is to educate. It's to educate and to help people learn how to make healthier choices. And that's great. But what I also found is that it's a little bit more to the story to that. And I believe my education with biology, psychology, and nutrition and dietetics gave me a different perspective. So what I have now is I have a private practice, and that's Better Vessel. And what it is I work with people individually with their nutrition. And for that to happen, it takes some conversations. But it also takes understanding what triggers are affecting our choices. And so to me, there's a link between our emotional, our psychological, and how our body interacts with how we perceive our food choices. So I look at it in a form of therapy as well, because I understand from a dietetic perspective how nutrients contribute just to the optimal functioning of your body internally, which includes your mental health, but also how we are perceiving our interactions with food on a emotional level.
So, and I think about that, and I think people lose that connection, right? So a lot of times if we're eating unhealthy, we see this difference in our body, right? So like the belly fat, other parts of us may just start looking different. So why would it not affect our brain as well? I think sometimes people forget that the food component affects that part of us as well.
What we do, I find in our world, how we're trained to feel that our goal to change our nutrition or to be healthy so we can change the outer image, which is the physical, which is what we see in the mirror. But understanding when I talk about people count calories, and I say let's count nutrients, because nutrients is what's going to provide your body with everything it needs to just to fulfill itself in its highest capacity. So one in particular is your brain health. When it comes to your brain, and this is just one of those random facts, is that when it comparable to your brain's weight, it's about 2% of your body's weight. but it utilizes 20% of your nutrients. So
Wow.
almost 1/4 of your nutrients are utilized by your brain. Not only that, your brain takes priority of all the nutrients off the top. So when people are wanting to make changes for their health, yes, make changes for the outside, but understand everything you're doing is also contributing to your body's ability as far as your brain health. And so when we deprive ourselves on the other end of it, we're depriving our brain with its glucose, with its amino acids, with its fatty acids, like all those different components that's going to help it to process at its highest capacity.
So when you hear the word diet, right? What do you think of that?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Well, so my title, I have coined myself as the dietitian against diets. And we all know the difference between what I mean by diets, not your clinical diets when you're in a hospital, but the mindset of how we have placed ourselves in the diet mentality and where that has taken us. And so having a platform to where I help people to not allow themselves to get into that mental compartmentalized structure of I can and I can't. I choose to help people to have a different perspective, interact with their nutrition in a way that they see can best benefit their health. And what I mean by that is that I think people have not created a relationship with food. And I say that people sometimes like, what does that mean? Most people have a relationship with food, but it makes them feel vulnerable, weak, lack of self-control. So that's more so of an adversarial relationship. So perhaps the other end of it is a partnership. How can you look at your nutrition as a form of just a source of life? Not just necessarily something that you put in your body, but it's a source of life. That, along with the air you breathe and the water you drink, you need those three components to live to its fullest capacity. So understanding your nutrition in that realm and making choices because you want the best for yourself, not just because it's going to promise weight loss. That's a perspective that I am. That's my platform as a dietitian against diets, instead of leaning on diets because they never work. If I can get a raise of hands of people that have tried to have been successful, it will be far and few in between. But if that hasn't worked, then maybe another avenue, and that's the perspective of choosing foods for self-care and self-love because you just want the best for your body. And if you start eating certain foods that you just want because you want the best for your body, the byproduct is that weight is going to come off. It's inevitable because you're choosing that apple or that salad because you just see the nutrients from it. You want the best for your body. You love yourself. And when you continue to eat in that perspective, the weight will naturally come off instead of feeling like you have to fight it all the time.
It is a fight, you know.
It is,
and
yeah.
Because I even think about myself, you know, and other people that I know. I mean, it is. I mean, it's draining. Like for me, that's like something on my mind. Like I gotta eat healthy. I need to eat healthy. It's like I'm like, why do I say that all the time to myself? And you
say you gotta eat healthy.
Yeah.
Instead of saying I prefer to eat healthy.
Yeah.
I choose. So it's the language too. Then the language has we unconsciously. Our language is an unconscious, gives you insight on what we're thinking. You know, we feel like we have to force ourselves to take care of ourselves. Why should we have to force ourselves? We should naturally want to do it, but before we do, we have to understand how can we build a partnership and have a positive relationship with food. So we do look at it as what's going to help us to move forward in life in the direction that we want, not something that's going to hold us back. And then when that happens, you can say, "Oh, I can't wait to have that grilled salmon and the steamed asparagus." Some people are not. Sometimes people say that. Sometimes they don't.
Yes.
But you'll be at a point where you're able to look forward to those foods because you know that it's going to make you feel good. You appreciate what's in it, and by doing that, you just want what's best for you. So you're going to choose that instead.
I mean, is it as young as infants, right, that we start developing these relationships with food that could be unhealthy the way we approach it?
It's your culture. You know, there's a components to nurture versus nurture. You know, some things are genetically predispositioned, and I think that's, to me, it dances a little bit with your culture, because if you're in an environment where these are the foods that you are exposed to, then yes, naturally your bodies and your palates want to gravitate towards those foods. But in regards to your habits, if you're not exposed to certain varieties and food that it's not been swimming around in butter or sodium or sugar, then you won't know what a real piece of broccoli tastes like. You won't know what, how can you enhance your flavors by just adding lemon and a little bit of garlic. You won't know. So yes, I think as a young person, you are developing habits from the ground up, and that's unfortunately what creates adults that has those same habits and keeps the generation going.
And that's how we raise kids then, by doing the same thing, prepping the same food the same way. How do we break some of those habits for our, like, if we're in the middle of that now and we have kids, then, I mean, what's some basic maybe ideas on how to like try to break some of those, other than saying, hey, I'm just going to start cooking this way, right? I mean, there's a challenge to that, and maybe it's life in general, but.
It's a challenge because we have intentions, but sometimes we don't know what steps to take first. We may rely on some sort of like internet top 10 things to do, and we try to do all 10 of them. Or even before we try to do it, not recognize which ones would best fit us first. And when it comes to our kids, like, we have already, unfortunately, created these habits and these expectations of certain foods and their texture and their flavor. And then on top of that, we are going against the grain of fast food restaurants, marketing, so it's a lot that we're dealing with as parents. But I don't think it's too late. It's not too late. What I tell parents that have kids that are picky eaters or not really favoring vegetables, I tell parents to try to encourage their kids to cook with them, to go grocery shopping with them, because they have a feeling of they're having a choice. They can choose now. And perhaps if they choose, that may actually make them feel like, I think I want to try this because I was the one that selected that. And I feel like starting there, and also being an influence, mirroring, what you want for your kids by you doing the same thing, not just what I say, do what I say, not what I do. When you flip it over and do both, then they see what you're doing, and then they're gonna want to be like mom and dad, and they're gonna be able to pick up some of those habits. But also with kids, I call it having a balance. Kids are gonna always like pizzas, and they're gonna like hamburgers, right? And you shouldn't try to take that away or make it look like that's a bad idea. But perhaps encourage them, bring on some baby carrots. Let's eat some fruit with that. How can you keep some of their choices that they enjoy, but also add some things on that is healthy for them, and help them not to be able to just don't start the language of this is good and this is bad, because you start that language, that becomes something that we associate all that. Yeah. We associate ourselves with. If I eat this that I call bad, then guess what? As soon as I eat it, how do I feel? Bad. Exactly. So we got to start changing the language. We got to start changing our perspectives and understanding that we have a choice, but we have to perhaps have a different approach than what we used to have when it comes to our interaction with nutrition.
Well, when you talk about the brain health as well with the nutrients, and then I think about how that can connect into the mental health side as well too, because we talk about what 20% when we have nutrients, the brain takes 20% of that right off the bat, right?
Right off the bat.
And so when we talk about the chemistry in the brain, and if we're struggling with something, either stress or if we have a mental illness of depression or something of that nature, where that gives us maybe the ability for our brain to be operating at a higher level, right? And then when we introduce different interventions, we might be more willing to try them or have the ability to try them where we're not as tired. So I really do think that's, a huge part of the connection.
And I mean, even, I mentioned earlier about nutrients, and certain nutrients have certain attributes about them. And when it comes to our moods and our, the probability of our depression, there are nutrients that can actually kind of help to manage that or to counter that we are most likely deficient upon it. And understanding that may not be the answer, but that will definitely curb it in a way of your mental health. In particular, B12 and folate, like those are known to be in conducive to correlation to decreasing depression and decreasing moods. But make sure we have those as far as our foods. So a lot of times when it comes to nutrition, if we don't recognize the value of the nutrients we're eating, we're missing the ball on it. So B12 is obviously, we've heard B12 helps B12 has many hats. It's going to give you more energy. It's going to increase your metabolism. It does all of that. But it also helps with your brain health and your neurotransmitters. So what foods are high in B12? It's mostly your animal products. And a lot of your, you'll have fortified carbohydrates or grains that are higher in B12. And then your folate, we've known from women that are pregnant, they need to make sure, they increase their folate intake because their child will have higher probability of neurotube damage, right? So that has a lot to do with, again, our central nervous system. So folate in an adulthood, how are we making sure that we're getting that enough? And you're going to get most of your folic acid and your folates from your dark green leafy vegetables. And that goes across the span from kale to spinach to Brussels sprouts. Dark, deep green leafy vegetables are highest in folate. So understanding the connection about food is just not a tool just to help to lose the weight, to, change the mirror image. It has a lot of more properties in which gives you more reason to incorporate it than we are taught or that we know.
Yeah, because I think, a lot of times people will be struggling, and even when you think about really stressful times at work, right? We know that all that level of stress can just kind of deplete us. We might be craving, or we might not have time, so we just grab food, right? Just grab food wherever we can get. But it's like taking the time to slow down and saying, okay, maybe I should have a nice green salad with some steak in there, or maybe some salmon, right? Something else,
both
right?
Are good,
right?
Yeah.
Both are good. But it's like those are the things that then there's some purpose behind that as well too. Or if you're struggling with depression, right? And maybe you're on some medication, and maybe you're thinking about going on medication, maybe these are things you can try. And yes, there's certain levels of depression and anxiety that are out there that definitely you need to seek treatment. But sometimes when we go through different stages, like maybe if we have seasonal affect disorder, maybe we need to make sure during those winter months we're really having more to B12s and things of that nature.
So folic acid actually helps to enhance the absorption of the antidepressant medications. So that's something good to know.
Exactly.
So again, it's like once we recognize that nutrition to me is of course I'm going to be biased, but it's the foundation to a lot of things in our body, physiologically. And our body will always be limited if we're not giving it those nutrients. What can it work off of? Think about it. What can it work off of? Can it work off a box of donuts? It will taste good on the tongue, but that's about it, right?
Yeah.
So it's one of those things that we have to change. We have to change our perspective in appreciating what we put in our bodies as far as its nutrients, and even just connecting those two right there, just that one simple thing of understanding how vital, certain nutrients are to your health, and just even just components that contribute to your health as far as medication and supplements.
Yeah, because you might go to the gym every single day, right? And you're doing those curls all the time, but you're eating the box of donuts, pizza for lunch, and you're not going to see the progress. Because, sometimes when we look at that, people are like, okay, I'm not seeing any progress because I can see my arms, but we don't know what's going on inside, and what it's doing to us.
Yeah, we're getting by.
But
that's about it.
Yeah.
Like,
because that brain is not getting strong by doing that.
It's not. It's working with whatever you give it. That's what it's going to work with. You give it, secondhand products, it's going to work secondhand, but you give it the best, it's going to perform the best. Simple.
So how come, like, when I am stressed, that I crave sugar? I mean, of course you don't know me, but that's one of those things that comes up, right? So I start having, and I don't even realize I'm stressed, but then I start craving sugar, or I start craving something, just junk food, right? But then all of a sudden I'm like, okay, wait a minute. I'm craving that because I am stressed. So I start, as the therapist in me, right? I start trying to put it all together. But I've heard other people talk about that too. I mean, is there just different chemicals in the brain that trigger different responses in our body, basically?
From the science perspective, I will agree that there are. I think just like alcohol, your body may respond to different from someone else's. And with that, that's a limitation of what you can do about that. But I will argue that there's a large percentage of it that's emotionally connected. And it's not necessarily a negative emotion. It can be a positive emotion. But it's all a perceived emotion that connecting this food will alleviate the situation. But think about it. It will send dopamines. It will make you feel good temporarily. But the longer stretch of what happens afterwards, it brings you right. The problem's still there. The stress is still there. And now you're emotionally feeling, I messed up again. You're feeling failure, that you overate or whatever. And to me, it brings back full circle. To me, it snowballs into this whole, it makes stress worse. In the beginning, feels good. But the lag behind it, which is a lot more longer, it backfills into having more stress and feeling less successful, and it just piles on. And I say it's perceived emotion. Like, we think every single time our answer is going to be that ice cream. It's going to be that brownie. If I can just have, I feel so much better. But every single time, you don't. Every single time, you don't. So perhaps recognize that connection. How can I start unraveling that and bringing in something that will make me feel better? And I get it. I get the emotion. I get it. It's not an easy ship to turn. It takes a long time to turn a ship. So it takes time to change. It takes time to recognize, okay, what's the trigger? Okay, now what I'm going to do about how I'm going to handle this trigger. The trigger is not to break it and I'm going to break this pattern. I'm just going to push through it. No, you're going to snap. You're going to come right back. But how can you recognize it, decide to try to find different routes as to how you can suffice that feeling, whether it's, if you want that brownie, eat half of it. It could be something just a smaller portion. Or recognize that if you want the brownie, it's not really the brownie, you want something chocolate. So how can you have something that's less detrimental that's chocolate? Recognize what can be the placeholder. Or how about this? Go for a 20-minute walk. Or go listen to a cool podcast show.
Yeah, Mental Health Matters.
There you go.
Yeah.
And your mind will dissipate from your thoughts. It's only because you're thinking about it. If you find some way to create a void, your taste buds you're not gonna still want the brownie afterwards. So it's a lot of just moving pieces, but you have to try different ways to disconnect that association.
So quite a few different interventions you just gave right there. That's great, and you get the dopamine going with the exercise, and you feel some of those other needs from a healthy standpoint.
Yes, and you feel good afterwards.
Yeah, because the brownie or whatever it may be, you're gonna feel sluggish. You're gonna be worn down. Yeah, exactly. Your brain won't be recharged.
And your brain, it won't. It won't. It'll go up and it'll go down. So yes.
So I think that's, that phrase you use, emotional health, that's the other side, So we talk about mental health a lot. We talk about mental illness, which is, a specific diagnosis. But I think there's so much that goes on in our worlds of that emotional health, day in and day out. And, for a fact, I think our diet and what we eat plays into that. I mean, without a doubt, and you look at, even when we have those different life stressors that goes on, or even celebrations, right? So one of the things I figured about my family was, when there's any type of celebration, you go out to eat, or you go get food, or you have some type of huge meal, and it wasn't healthy either, but that's how my family celebrated. So anytime there's a celebration, I'm like, let's eat.
That's the first thing that comes to mind.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. So it's instilled in there. So
food is everywhere.
Isn't it so powerful too?
It's there on your highs when there's anniversaries, there's birthday parties, there's celebrations. It's there on your lows when you're feeling depressed, when you lost your job, when you just got into a fight. It is everywhere with us. I call it the roller coaster of life. It's with us on our highs and then with us on our lows. And that's a hard concept to grasp. And then even though, okay, now what do I do with that? So when I'm working with my clients as a dietitian, I understand life is going to happen regardless. It's supposed to happen. Yeah. So when we're getting ready to make our healthier life, we have to take that into consideration. It won't be a smooth, untainted road. It's going to be bumpy. It's going to be bushes in the middle of the road. It's going to be potholes, and we're going to slip and we're going to go left or right sometimes. But how can, in the midst of life, the goal is to make, in my opinion, make it you're more successful, be more sustainable, is to learn how to be consistent. That's kind of like the rock I stand on. If you can learn to build consistency, then you can navigate through those ups and downs, because consistency will hold stronger, because those ups and downs, they're going to come and they're going to go. They're going to come and they're going to go. But if you can maintain a level of consistency, that's all relative. You can maintain a level of consistency, you're going to be able to streamline through that. So that can be done in simple ways. I tell people all the time, first thing you do, we all hear it, but let's implement it. Start off with water.
Water. Oh, I have some in my hand.
And there you
That's
go.
perfect. Yeah,
Cheers.
exactly.
Oh, and I even had a joke yesterday. I did a talk, and I said, hey, go on Amazon. Whatever water bottle speaks to you, has the best design, whatever material, buy it. Just have it on you as your person for 30 days. Just keep it with you. And then eventually you build consistency with that. Leave it alone. Don't try anything else, because the goal is not to keep building, it's to learn consistency first. So you build that platform of consistency, and then the next step is I'll just start swapping out my fruit instead of my chips. Just keep your water and your fruit. Keep it consistency.
Nice.
And you notice that is more thicker, is unwavering, and you're able to sustain the idea of consistency. And from that, you just slowly build on it. But no matter what, you learn to maintain consistency. So when you are going to your parties and celebrations and you're having a bad day, what are you going to grab? The good old water. What are you going to grab when you go to your holiday parties? You may get a couple of chips, but you're going to go for that fruit, because you have built a level of consistency. So how can we use that and build on it? And to me, in my opinion, that's what's going to help create more sustained living, because you build consistency.
And that's the key, to be able to sustain all that, because that's why we always say diets fail, right? Oh yeah, I lost 15 pounds, but then I put it right back on.
Yeah.
The sustainability of it. So
True.
you're building that foundation in there.
So you've, I'm not sure if you knew what happened not too long ago, but from my practice of working with people and seeing, it's some deep layers that it's entailed to be able to connect with people and to help them to see, not tell them, but help them to see. And from my years of interacting with different varieties of clients and people, I have found a way to utilize my coaching on a larger scale. And I'm not sure if you were told, but I had a book that was released last week.
Oh, wait, was it just last week?
Yes.
I did not know it was just last week. I knew about the book, but not just last week. Yes.
And the title of it is called Play to Win, The Food Fight. Play to win, just like anything in life, career, marriage, parenting, you get in it to win. So my book is based off my coaching and my practices, and when I work with clients, we're presenting them winning ways to overcome their connections with food, why they find themselves at a stand-stop, why they always find themselves doing the same thing over and over again. It's to help break the yo-yo cycle. In the food fight, it's really not about food. It's about the other things that we're dealing with in life, and food is just a placeholder. So we're not really fighting food. We're fighting ourselves. And that's another concept that people have not grasped, because you're always fighting that. You're not, food is just a tool you're fighting with, but you're fighting your physical self, your mental self, your emotional self. So again, once we start change the story and change our perspective and change our actions and use nutrition as a way to reflect how we see ourselves and how we care about ourselves, we're not fighting ourselves anymore.
Nice.
So
I'm
a
big proponent of know thyself, right? And so to help anybody, as a therapist in the field or anything, you got to know yourself. And I feel that about relationships as well too. You got to know yourself. So this book really sounds like, that's what it's talking about, is figuring out who you are. And like you said, those inner struggles that we all have when it surrounds food. And I love the fact that you talk about it's the placeholder, right? The food is the placeholder. Everything else is going around. And also you said something earlier too about, food's always there. It's like the one partner who never leaves us.
Always
right?
there for you.
So interesting. Now, where can you find this book at?
Well, right now you have to go on my website to find the book. It's ReshaundaThonton.com. I have to spell that. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's ReshaundaThonton, Thornton, THORNTON.com. But if you look up Better Vessel, you will find Reshaunda, Better Vessel, all one word, Better Vessel. and you'll find me. But you simply go to my website, and there's a section on my webpage where you can purchase the book. Right now, we have paperback and ebook. It's going to be available this week. And by this time next month, I have my audiobook out. So we have multiple ways in which you can utilize that. Depends on your scenario and your dynamics of your life.
So when did you know you wanted to write a book? When did that come to you?
This time last year, it was a thought. And then I realized I have 8 hours, which means I can see 8 clients in 5 days. That's not enough to affect change. And so with seeing so much success with the individual people that I work with, I have to figure out a way to make this as large as I can be. And so my book is my way of disseminating my coaching on a larger scale. Now, is it just like talking to Reshaunda in person, one-on-one, for an hour? No.
Not as good as this. Not as good as this podcast, right?
Okay. Yeah, not as good as this podcast.
No, you, talking to you.
Oh,
you're the
being with me in the
podcast. You're the podcast.
Yes. Well, thank you.
Yes.
But it's better than Googling something. It's better than finding someone that just promised they can help you to lose weight. If you want someone that's going to be able to teach you how to do it for yourself and your body, and I tell people, I'm not your accountability partner. I am on this journey with you, because it takes both of us to do this. I can be the navigation and you can be the one taking the route, but we have to work it together. And my goal is to help clients learn how to do it themselves. So when you do lose that weight, you are there mentally, emotionally, and you have the tools you need to keep your body at the same health level as it was. And so that's the significance of what I do in my practice. But so my book is just kind of like one slight down step from that, because it provides winning ways to how you can overcome certain areas. So it's actually written in 5 sections. It's meant to be written kind of like a self-help book. So it's not in particular chronological order. So it's sections, so you can just go to it, say, okay, let me read on this part. There's things that are going to make you smile. You're going to have stories that you can connect to. There's going to be mantras. There's going to be all different ways in which how to do it. And you have to decide which one works for you. But the goal is really just to help people who struggle with their body image, their life, their health. It's all connected, and they struggle with their whole life. And they can decide to let it hover over the head like a dark cloud, or they can decide to do something about it. And I feel nutrition is a vehicle to help people to love themselves, have more confidence in themselves, and live the life that they want to live.
Wow, that's perfect.
Yeah.
That's perfect. Well, I encourage you guys to check out Reshaunda. Go to her website, buy that book right off the bat.
Buy the book.
You know, you have accomplished a lot. Like when you look around on her website, you know, you're on Fox 2 on a consistent basis.
I am.
You're doing stuff with corporate levels. Individual stuff. But if somebody's interested in coming and just hearing more about your services, they can find you on the website, right? And maybe.
Yes. So definitely. Well, I actually did a TED Talk a couple of months ago. I think I told you that.
Yes, you did tell me that.
And so that to me is kind of a summation of my position. So if anyone or TED Talk watchers, go to YouTube, just type in Reshaunda Thornton, and I have a unique name, so I will pop up. But that's my platform, so you can get a feel of what I'm about. But yes, definitely going to my website, they can find me, find my services, what I offer. Obviously, social media is Reshaunda Thornton, Reshaunda at Better Vessel, on Instagram and on Facebook and Twitter as well. So there are multiple ways to reach out to me. Anyone that just have any quick questions, I am here to be that person to answer it for you. If you want to talk more in depth about what works for you, my number you'll find on the website. My contact information you'll find on the website.
Perfect.
Yes.
Well, Reshaunda, thank you for being with us today on Mental Health Matters. This has been awesome. I think we learned some great tips and techniques and interventions, and we're also educated on quite a few things. So once again, we've been able to tie in our everyday living to mental health, you know, and that's what we try to do. It helps break down the stigma. It helps people realize nothing to be ashamed of about your mental health, whether it be up or it be down, whether it be a mental illness. The bottom line is, if you want to get better, if you want to just have overall well-being, hopefully you're going to take some tips today and apply that to your life. Until next time, this is Tom Duff with Mental Health Matters.
This has been Mental Health Matters with Tom Duff of St. Louis Counseling Services. Check out stlouiscounseling.org for more information.